Hi, my name's Chris Croft, and we're going to have a little look at negotiating now. I'm going to give you my top 10 tips in one video. So, although negotiating is tricky because you're into the unknown and you never know what the other person wants or how much they're prepared to pay, what they're prepared to give you, there's a process you can follow which is designed to optimize your chances of getting the best outcome. And I'm going to talk you through that process. Okay, so the first step I'm going to put on here is decide to do it. I think the biggest reason people don't get a good deal when they negotiate is they don't even try to negotiate. So rule number one really is if you don't ask, you don't get. And I'm going to put that on here. If you don't ask, you don't get. So if you're cheeky enough to contact somebody and say, you know, I'd like one of your products to try and review it on my blog, for example, who knows? The worst that'll happen is they'll say, no, you can't have it, or we'll give it to you half price, and you're still ahead of where you would have been. So rule number one with negotiation, give it a go. You never know what's going to happen. Now, another tip for this first stage is I'm going to put instead of yes or no on here. And what I mean by that is if you're asked, suppose somebody wants you to write an article about something and you're quite busy and it's not really your favourite subject or whatever. Maybe it's not going to be on a massively popular blog, but it might be worth doing. Instead of just saying, yes, all right, I'll do it, or no, I'm not going to do it, there's a middle ground, which is to negotiate. So why not say, I'll do it if you could do this for me? And it might be money, it might be products, it might be that if you write something for their blog, they'll write something for yours. Or if they want to put something on your blog, you might say, well, that's okay, but I want to put something on yours. Some sort of reciprocal arrangement. So rather than just saying no to something, always think, well, you know, maybe there's some way that this can be a good deal for both of us. So negotiate instead of saying yes or no. Now, the third thing I want to say at this very early stage of deciding whether or not to negotiate is you can always crumble. Put crumble on there. So if you are asking for something quite demanding, say quite a lot of money to do a job for somebody, and they say, oh, we're not prepared to pay that, you can always go, all right, I'll do it for less. So you're not going to lose a deal if you try to negotiate. And similarly, if you ask for money off from something and they say, oh no, we can't possibly give you money off, you've always got the option of going, all right then, I'll pay the full price. So never think that trying to negotiate is going to lose you a deal, because it's not. Once you realise that you can always crumble, it must therefore follow that you can't lose a deal by trying to negotiate. So always give it a go. The worst case you'll have to do is crumble. If you crumble half the time, but the other half you get a really good deal, then that's a fantastic result, isn't it? You know, you've made money half of the time. So we've decided to do it. What's the first thing we do? And the first thing once you're into the process is to prepare. Most people don't prepare enough for negotiations. Most people just wade in. It's really worth doing a bit of thinking. There's a whole list of things to prepare, and you can get more information on this on my online course, my full online course, which is on udemy.com. That's U-D-E-M-Y. If you don't know about Udemy, it's well worth checking out because there's loads of stuff on there about everything in the world, not just negotiating. But I would pick two things to prepare. And the number one thing that you should prepare, and it's so important, I'm going to put a box around it, is your walk-away point. Your walk-away point. So with every negotiation, you should always decide, if you're selling, what is the lowest I'll settle for in order to do this job. And if you're buying, what is the most I'll pay for this item? What is the point at which I'll say, no, in that case, forget it and walk away? So it's always worth a go, and you might ask for a whole lot, and you might think, if I don't get a whole lot, I'm not going to do this. Or you might ask for a whole lot, but you might be thinking, if I get anything, I'll be happy. Or if I get a little bit, I'll be happy, but if I don't even get a little bit, then I'm going to walk away. So the key is to think very carefully before you start, how much must I have without which I'll walk away? And what that does is it makes you much stronger when you're in the negotiation. You don't have to be planning and thinking, oh, should I agree to that or not? I don't know. You've already decided what your walkaway point is. But also, the fact that you're prepared to walk away makes you stronger. The other person will kind of feel that you have that power. And occasionally you will have to walk away, and that will be a shame, and you'll feel a bit bad, but it's made you stronger for next time, because it's proved to you that you do have the power to walk away. So, always plan your walk away point. And then the second thing to always prepare is the other person's weaknesses. Now, I know this sounds a bit horrible, and I don't really mean it to be like that, but it's just we tend to focus on our own weaknesses, and we tend to think, oh, you know, what if I don't get this, and I really want to get my stuff onto their web page, or I really want to get that, you know, free bag to try out, or whatever it is. And you tend to dwell on your own weaknesses. But remember that the other party has weaknesses too. So remember that they're probably thinking, this is great, somebody wants a free bag, someone's going to review our bag. Or this is great, somebody wants to write a post for my blog, or whatever. So always remember that the other people have weaknesses too. Even if you're booking a room at a hotel, let's say, and maybe it's the only hotel in the area, the only one that's any good, they've got empty rooms. They're thinking, brilliant, somebody wants to book a room at our hotel. So you're in perhaps more of a position of power than you realise. And once you start thinking about the other person's weaknesses, it makes you feel stronger. So those are the two things to prepare to make yourself feel stronger. Your walk-away point and the fact that the other person has weaknesses too. Now, once you finish preparing, it's then time to talk to the person, face-to-face, Skype, phone, however you're going to do it. Email maybe, although it's not as good to negotiate by email really. You want to be able to feel the body language. So what happens when you first talk to the person? And the answer is, there's a phase called the preamble. And the preamble is the part of the negotiation where neither of you have put an opening offer on the table yet. You're just chatting, and how are things, how are you busy, oh, you know, I like your blog, this is a nice hotel, or whatever it is, and you're just chatting. And the one thing to do at the preamble is, if possible, don't open first. Okay, I'm going to put avoid opening first. The reason for this is that if you can get the other person to open first, it might well be good news. So if you're selling and you don't know how much you can ask for whatever service you're offering, you'll find that the best thing, rather than coming out with a number which might actually be ridiculously cheap, it's better to say to them, what sort of price do you normally pay for this? And they may tell you, and it might be great news. And similarly, if you're buying, instead of offering them some sort of a price, which might be far too high, if you say to them, how much do you want for that? When they quote you their price, it might be much lower than you thought. So always get the other person to open first, because it might be good news. Now, at the end of the preamble, somebody has to open first, and it might be you. Ideally, it wouldn't be. But either way, there'll come a point where you've opened and they've opened. And that's when it really starts. So the opening offers are really key. And I want to say two things about opening offers. The first one is open beyond your best hope. I'll just put beyond on here. Beyond best hope. So if you think you might be able to charge, I don't know, let's say £100 for a piece of work that you're doing for somebody, you might be able to charge 100. Maybe 150 is the most you could dream of. Probably be 100, might be as low as 50. What are you going to quote them? And the answer is you've got to quote them more than 150. Because if you say, well, I'll do it for 80, they're not going to say, oh, go on, let me give you 100. So you'll never get more than you quote. And it could be that they are the one person who's prepared to pay 150. So you've got to ask for 150, or perhaps a little bit more than 150, if you're going to get that. Now, obviously, you can then come down from the 150, and that's what happens next. So start with opening beyond the best you could hope for. And it may not be money, it might be other things. You know, you might think, well, I'd quite like to to have several podcasts on a particular channel. So say to them, I'd like to do 3 podcasts for you. And then they might say, well, we can only give you 2, but that's still great. It's more than you might have had. So ask for more than you could get, and then you can move back from there. Now, the other thing about opening offers that I want to put on here is not a round number. So if somebody says, how much will it cost to do that particular job? Don't say £100, say £127. Because that looks as if you've really thought about it carefully, and that really is the right number. If you say 120 quid or 100 quid, it just sounds as if you're just making a number up and you're inviting them to negotiate with you and to drag you down. So ask for something very specific, and then it sounds as if there's a good reason for it. Okay, so open beyond your best hope, and it shouldn't be a round number. Similarly, if they open with a round number, you know they've made it up, and then you can know that negotiation is definitely an option, although of course it's always an option. So, once you've opened and they've opened, we now have to get from your position and their position to some sort of place in the middle. And then we're into the phase called bargaining. And again, I want to just give you 2 tips for bargaining. The first one is move in small amounts, small steps. The reason why you shouldn't give away a large amount of money or time or product or whatever it is firstly, you're just giving away more. Suppose you say, I want to be paid 150 quid, and they say, well, that's too much. You say, all right, I'll do it for 100. Firstly, you've given away £50. But more importantly, they're thinking, well, so what was the 150 then? So you look dishonest if you suddenly come down a lot. Whereas if you say, oh, I suppose I could do it for 140, then that's only 10 quid and that doesn't look so bad. You're also sending a signal, if you say I could only come down to 140, that the most they're ever going to get you down to, or the lowest is probably 130. Whereas if you come down from 150 to 100, they're thinking, I could probably get this for 50. And you're inviting them to try to take more. So move down by a really small amount, which signals that they're not going to get a lot. And it doesn't make you look as dishonest. Now, the second part of this is also that when you move, you should always trade. So don't just say, all right, I'll do it for 100. But to say, well, if you could do this for me, then I'd do it for 100. So get something back for it. And that has 2 advantages. One of them is that you obviously do get something back from it. And that could be something quite valuable that you get back. But also, you don't look dishonest, because there's a reason why you've come down. I can see why you're doing it for 100 quid, because you want to have a post on my website as well, or whatever it might be. So always trade. And the wording for trading should be if you, then I. If you, then I. If you booked me twice, then I could do it for a cheaper rate. If you were prepared to put one of my blogs on your website, then I would be happy for you to put one on mine. And the reason why it's this way around is that they have to concede first. If they are prepared to do something for you, then it makes it possible for you to do the thing for them. Otherwise, you can't. So that's the strongest wording, if you, then I. And a little side effect of this is that you need to prepare what your tradables are beforehand. Because you don't want to be in a negotiation thinking, well, what can I ask for? I've got to come down in price, but what can I ask for? So ideally, you've already thought, I'd like to have several posts, or I'd like them to send me some product, or I'd like to stay in their hotel for free, or whatever it might be. So in your mind, have lots of thoughts about the tradables that you're going to get when it gets to the trading time. And then you can move in small amounts, and you can get a tradable each time. So you can end up with a whole list of stuff in exchange for coming down from your opening offer that was pretty much beyond your best hope anyway. So that's bargaining. Now, the final stage of negotiating is the closing stage, and I only want to say one thing really about the closing stage, which is to look out for the nibble. The nibble is where, after you've agreed, they ask for something else. They say, oh, by the way, you wouldn't mind doing this for us as well, would you? And it's really tempting because you've just done the deal and you're happy. You think, yeah, I can do that for you as well, no problem. But sometimes the nibble can be something that's really big or inconvenient, and it can ruin the effectiveness of the whole deal for you. So just because you're delighted that you've got a deal, don't be weak at the end. Don't let it all slip away at the last minute with the nibble. So that's an overview of the negotiating process. Quite a lot to think about there, and I hope it's been useful. Goodbye from me.